Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm just delighted to be here with you. The show is being recorded before Yom Kippur, so for my listeners and viewers who are Jewish and who actually fast on the day of, I wish you much luck. It's a 25-hour fast. It can be a bit tough for some, but it can also be very refreshing and very spiritual in nature. So much luck to you. As we've mentioned in the past, we're very fortunate to have sponsorship from the Professional Center, and I just want to tell you a little bit about them before we move ahead on this very auspicious interview we're about to conduct. The Avrum Rosensweig Show is sponsored by the Professional Center, Toronto's premier co-working space at 120 Adelaide, where more is the standard. It's the industry leader since 1987. TPC offers private and team offices, fully equipped meeting rooms, collaborative workspaces, premier amenities, and exceptional hospitality. Book a day, a week, however long you need. Escape work from home distraction and discover more privacy, more productivity, and more community at TPC. If you'd like more information, you can see their website at the bottom of my screen. And here's the kicker. If you mention my name, Avrum, you get 10% off private offices and meeting rooms. I'd also like to mention that we receive sponsorship and donations, and we have received some, so we're grateful to those people who have stepped up and are supporting the show. My fundraising goal for this podcast is to cover the costs and to make a little bit of money at the same time, and we would appreciate greatly if you would contribute to it. I think we're doing some important stuff here. The idea behind the show is to be inspirational and really to give humankind a pat on the back. I am open to a discussion around support, and you can communicate with me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Now, today we have a very special guest, the acclaimed theater director, Joel Greenberg. How are you, Joel?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me in.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Joel is known for his innovative storytelling and ability to bring complex characters to life. He has captivated audience with his unique interpretation and fresh perspectives, from bold adaptations of classical plays to original works that challenge convention. His artistic journey is nothing short of inspiring. Now, the beauty of our discussion today is that Joel and I have become real colleagues. Not that I'm about to direct theater. I think I would be quite a failure at that. But Joel has launched a podcast, and I'm so incredibly excited about speaking to him about it, speaking to you about it, and hearing more about what your goals are and what you want to accomplish. And I love this craft. I love the ability to be able to interview in the way that I want, how I want, with the background set by me, and to have that freedom and breadth of creativity. So as they say in the vernacular, muzzle tough to you, Joel. You must be excited.
Yeah, I am. It's very new to me. It's exciting to be working on something that I've never done before, and it's new. The first series has just started, and episode 3 of 11 dropped yesterday. So there's still lots of time for people to check it out. Life in Stages is the name of the podcast. It's a series of conversations between me, and it's one-on-one, much like what you do. And with it, the guests that come in are senior level artists, Canadian, mostly actors, some writers, some actor writers. I was curious, having heard a British podcast called the Two Shot Pod, in which actors who had been working for a long time discussed how they came to the work, how they sustained their careers, what the precarious nature of the career, like what impact that had on their personal, professional lives. I was so immediately engaged by it, and I thought it would be worth exploring, doing much the same with people here, and so that was the impetus.
Joel, the podcast world for you is pretty new, yet I understand from our discussions that it is something that you actually dreamt of doing. What after doing theater for so many years, what's the allure of podcasting for you?
Oh, there are a few things. First, it's so nice not to carry the anxiety that I have always carried about going into rehearsal, the expectations I place on myself and undoubtedly on others. I don't know that that's a premeditated thing, but from one project to the next, I know that it gets hard. I find that it gets harder and harder. It got harder and harder to do the work. My demands were greater on myself, and with the podcast, I don't feel any of that, and personally, the nicest thing is that I get to speak to people many of whom I've worked with at some point. I mean, some of the people in this first series, I think of all the guests who I spoke with, there were 3 who I have worked with a lot, and I knew them pretty well. But the others were people I had worked with maybe 30 or 40 years ago. So we don't know each other really, and this is a rare opportunity to actually talk to somebody. And I realized in doing it that actors are rarely, if ever, asked about themselves. I mean, actors are usually, if they're doing something promotional, it's about an upcoming project or selling something. And they're legit, but those interviews tend to be pretty short, and the questions tend to be fairly standard. But when I can talk to somebody for about an hour and find out where they came from professionally, and is what they are doing now in any way linked to how they were raised, and if so, what's the connection? And especially since in, I think, all but 2 of the cases, the people I have spoken with said that growing up, that theater performing was in no way connected to their upbringing. I find that, I find that really fascinating. It wasn't for me. So it's not even, I'm not projecting, but it gives me the opportunity to talk to people in a way that I wouldn't otherwise have the time. And I'd say both sides, when you're working with an actor in rehearsal, you're there to, you've got the project is the focus, and the project is the engine. There's little time to ask questions like, did you grow up, in theater? At least that's not the process that I've known for about 50 years.
Yeah, the art of schmoozing, it's a very, very particular one. And if you're good at it, then you can elicit magical things from people. As an example, Joel, my dear friend Harvey Brownstone, he has a show in which he interviews stars, but it's not just a show. He's rising up in the echelons, I guess, of podcasting, and is now considered to be #1 in the world in terms of that. And he has this brilliant ability to elicit very intimate memories or thoughts or ideas from great actors and great actresses. Like, he interviewed Robert Wagner, who hasn't done an interview in many years.
Right.
And he was there. He was present with Robert Wagner in a way that one just doesn't normally see from actors, as you were saying. Do you think you have that magic of schmoozing? Are you a good schmoozer?
No. I've never thought of myself that way. I'm not. No, I don't. I certainly don't think of myself as a schmoozer. I'm not a networker. I enjoy social interaction, and I'm always much more comfortable in outside of rehearsal, much more comfortable in smaller rather than larger groups. And I can be in a large group, but I don't seek that out. And I certainly, in those settings, I don't imagine that I'm ever considered sort of the center of those gatherings.
Yes, yes. I think the secret, by the way, of asking a good question is honesty. It's authenticity. And I'll tell you, at the end of the day, Joel, tell me if you agree with me, and maybe this is part of theater as well, it is being incredibly curious about the person whom you are speaking with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll get from my very recent current experience.
Yeah.
There are people who I made a list of people who I thought would be a really interesting cross section of backgrounds and performing histories and all of that. And I sent invitations to people, and everybody was very excited and enthusiastic. So everybody said sure, and then I realized, as I'm talking to people, whether I knew them well or not, I said, well, here are people who are speaking openly and freely, and that's that's what's the word? It's I mean, it's pretty amazing actually that people are so willing to talk, knowing that it's for a public forum. It's
an honor, really, don't you find?
Yeah, and I think some of it honestly is maybe maybe regardless of what the focus of the conversation is or the backgrounds of the people. In my case, I really do believe that actors are really interesting people, and rarely, if ever, get the chance to talk about themselves. Now, I'm sure that there are many actors who have no interest whatsoever in doing that in any kind of public forum, but it is gripping. And I know from some of the response I've already had from listeners that it is, somebody said, I felt like I was eavesdropping. One of the first comments I got actually was in the first episode when somebody contacted me and said, I loved it because I felt that I was eavesdropping, but not in a sort of salacious way. But I really felt that I was included in the conversation that the two of you were having. And that was certainly how I felt when I listened to that British podcast I referred to. I felt that I'd been invited in, and I love the feeling.
Yeah, I do too. It's like listening to those podcasts. It's like being a fly on the wall, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that especially actors or actresses who have gone through their career, there's a richness to acting, to being a thespian, and they are one of those groups that have incredible amounts of stories to tell, and the people that they have met. Like, I'm taking a look at your list here of your first go around. You have people like Sheila McCarthy, Jeff Miller, Michael Healy, Ron Leah, and Fiona Reed. Now, Fiona Reed, what a life this woman must have, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How was that interview?
Oh, it was great. And it was great. And it was, Fiona and I worked together a couple of times, but really a very long time ago. It would have been in the late 70s or early 80s at the most recent. So it's been a very, very long time since we have worked together, but I've certainly seen a lot of her work since. And her interview is so revealing because it's so honest, and it's unsentimental, but she talks at length about what what her early aspirations were, and what she, I guess, what she defined for herself as success, and how that changes and how the world changes and you change with it. Yeah, it was, you've been in films, you've worked on Broadway, you're working here, you're living here. It's a great interview. And it's a conversation.
A conversation, right? I call it a schmooze.
Yeah, no, it is. I don't use a script. I really had no idea how to do this or how others did it.
Yeah.
And
very honest.
Well, no, I didn't, and I don't pretend that I haven't been heavily influenced by the Two Shot Pod, that British podcast I keep referring to, because I've no idea how Craig Parkinson, who is the host of that, I have no idea how he works really, but what I know from listening is it sounds as if each conversation is definitely different.
Yes.
That there isn't a preset list of questions or anything like that. And the guests really drive the conversation. So their responses generate the questions or the comments that he makes, that he shares in it as well. I mean, he talks about himself. So it really is a conversation, and they're conversations with very few exceptions that I've never had before with actors.
I've watched some of the great interviewers over time. The Dick Cavett, I actually think Howard Stern is an incredible interviewer. Larry King was phenomenal, especially in his monosyllabic approach to interviewing. He'd say, and how was your life? Well, my life has been very complex. And the guest would answer, and his response would be, how so? And he would carry this whole interview, probably saying 50 words throughout. But I think that the prize in the cereal box when you're a podcaster, when you're an interviewer, remember when you're a kid, you stick your hand in the cereal box, pull out a ring. Yeah. I think it's when your guests, and tell me if you've had this yet, where they'll say, Joel, that's a great question, man. Nobody's ever asked me that. Have you had that yet?
Nope.
It's going to come. It's going to come.
Yeah, well, maybe. I remember Brian Linehan had his quite extensive interview show, and he was very good at it. I mean, he was a really good interviewer. But ultimately, for me, I felt that guests on his show were told that at some point they had to say something like, boy, you really do your homework. Or how did you find that out? Because I don't know that there was any interview that I don't remember it all that clearly. It was a long time ago. But I don't know that there was ever an episode where somebody didn't say something like that. And I thought after a while, I said, I'm sure it's true, but it just sounding a little programmatic. Anyway, to your point, no, nobody has. I mean, a couple of guests have said it really has been fun. This was really good, and they were surprised how much time had elapsed in the course of the conversation. But we'll see.
And were they all comfortable with your transition from being a director into an interviewer?
Oh, I think so. I mean, there's been no discussion about that. No. I mean, I sent. I sent these invitations, people responded, and then I said, here's a 3-week period. Please let me know the 2 or 3 dates and times that work best for you. And you can come into the studio or you can do it on Zoom. That's really your choice. And I said I have no script. I hope, my hope is that you will really be the one leading or at least participating extensively, because this podcast, if it were only about me, I wouldn't need to invite anybody to join. And that's really it. I mean, I think 1 or 2 people asked if it was video as well as audio because of their own experiences. I said, no, it's strictly audio. And that was it. I mean, that really was... That was all the information anybody seemed to need.
Well, it's incredible what you're doing, and I wish you so much luck in your venture. I'm sure it'll be wonderful. And I think the step forward, the step ahead that you have of many podcasters, and there are a million out there,
Yeah.
is that you know the folks, right? You've been part of a very special community.
Yeah.
So when Joel Greenberg gives an actor and actress a call, they're likely to take the call, right?
I guess. One of the things I've asked a few of the people who have worked extensively throughout there and continue, well into, these are people who've been at this work for anywhere from 30 to 50 years. And with a couple of them, I said, your name is pretty public and you are a familiar person. So I think it's fair to say that public perception is that you never stop working. Yeah. Or whenever you feel like working, that's easy for you. And how true is that? And of course, the answer is it's not true at all. There are periods where we don't work. There are periods where we want to work, and it's a struggle to find the work or to find people who are as excited as we are about a particular project. So I haven't yet come across somebody who says I'm much too busy. I don't have time for this. And somebody did point, one of the guests, and I think it may have been Fiona, pointed out, and she's right. Canada is notorious for not having a star system.
Yes.
And there certainly are recognizable, familiar names, faces. There's no question about that. But it isn't a commodity that it is certainly in the States. So
why is that? Why do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's part of. First of all, Canada is a small country. The population. It is a really small population, spread out. It's regional. The regional differences are substantial. There isn't nearly enough work for all the people who want to do this work. The television and film industry in Canada is tiny certainly compared to the States. And the sheer numbers and the money. All of those contributing factors. And I do think there's also something about the Canadian the niceness that Canada is cursed to have as a kind of label. But I don't think that Canadians are so focused on themselves, themselves to the exclusion of others. Yeah, that's a general statement, and probably I can say honestly is based on no science whatsoever and no research on my part. But from the people that I've met and people who have had to make decisions about whether or not to move somewhere else, and some people have, obviously, and some people have been very successful doing that. But if that's the kind of career you want, you're not going to have that in Canada. And so there are many people, but certainly in the performing arts, many people who have sought careers, particularly in the States, where that degree of success can be reached. Hardly anybody gets there, but there are people who do. And if there are some people who do, there's no reason to think that you can't be one of those people too. Mm-hmm. And many people that I know who have tried and come back, haven't come back because they failed. They said that they realized that this is not who I am. I can do this just so long, but I'm really not meant to be living in LA, for instance, and doing one series of pilots after another, or auditions where I don't even get to do the pilot. That there's just so much of that and some individuals can take before they say, this really is.
I think you're right. I think it takes a lot of grit. I just interviewed Carla Collins, and Carla is a comedian. She's an actress. Mm-hmm. She's a model. She's a stunning human being, and she is very, very generous of spirit. I like her a lot. You can see the Canadianism in her within our interview. very
Yeah.
kind, very sweet, a little bit self-critical, but she stuck it out. She stuck it out. She has that grit. But
Yeah.
you are right. I know a lot of actors and actresses who have come back. And I will tell you something, that in the realm of podcasting, Joel,
Yeah.
there's something similar about how it plays out in Canada versus America. What I have done to a large extent is I am starting to interview a lot of people out of New York or other southern United States or wherever, because their population is 10 times our population, right?
Yeah.
That grit that I spoke of and that you alluded to is there. There's a tenacity. People want to hear. They want to be involved. They want to talk. We don't really have that here in Canada. So is your goal to strictly stay with Canadian actors and actresses?
Oh yeah. No, I'm not. I don't really agree with you. That, I mean, if I'm understanding what you mean by grit, I don't think somebody coming back here doesn't have grit. I think they know themselves and they know how they need to live.
Okay.
And by live, I don't mean make money. I mean how to survive and how to feel like you're a person and that you are yourself. I don't think it's the right fit for everybody. I mean, the same, probably to a less dramatic extent, is people who work in New York or want to work in New York. And I know many actors who have worked in New York, who have worked on and off Broadway, and who live here and who can't imagine actually sort of relocating to a place where they say you don't have time to breathe. And frankly, that, and I know this from a lot of friends I have who do live in New York, who are New Yorkers, that it crosses all lines, all economic lines. The fact that somebody might be making a great deal of money, I mean, it's helpful, there's no question, but it doesn't change the fact that you never stop racing. And the pulse, I don't know LA at all. I was there once, not for professional reasons, but I do know New York pretty well. And it is a city that it is the engine. And you give yourself over to it, you cannot beat, you can't figure out how to lick the city. And for some people, that energy is what drives them. And it is.
I think your point is well taken. The grit was not the right word. Yeah. New York is, in fact, the city that doesn't sleep. I know people who work there and live there on many different levels. My family are involved in construction and building, and they are constantly pursuing another building or the opportunity to make their company better. It's a frenetic attitude, and I don't think we're frenetic here, which is not to diminish it, right?
No, it is frenetic, and it's unsparing. As I said, nobody is spared that, because the feeling to me, and this is really based on friends I had, and these are not theater people who have work in different professions, who live in New York and can't imagine living anywhere else, and I understand that, but they never ever stop. There's always something else, and I'm sure there was a point in my life where I thought I could do that. I mean, I never lived there. I never really wanted to live there, but my younger daughter lived in New York for about 10 years. And so I was there a lot, and I could be there for long periods of time. And I've now come to the point, and some of it might be about my age as well, but now ideally for me is 3 or 4 days in New York and I'm done. And that's staying with friends. I mean, being with friends and having social interaction. It's not just racing and trying to get through the city. It's actually spending time with people. But even with that, so 3 or 4 days and I'm gone. It's just, the city is it's just, the last time I was there in, I'm going to be there again in about 2 weeks, but I was last there in the end of early May. And I hadn't been there for a while, and I was there by myself. And the city is just a mess. There is road work everywhere.
Yeah.
Buildings are covered in scaffolding. Like no building, the smartest buildings, the most expensive buildings are not spared. If the city feels as though it's having a nervous breakdown, maybe it was me having a nervous breakdown, but it was it was unbearable. And I wasn't staying in the dreaded Times Square area. I was staying where people live and have families and do that sort of thing. So it was either Brooklyn or the Upper West Side. And it was no different up there on the Upper West Side, coming out of the apartment, walking along West End Avenue, which is empty of stores and things, and you turn a corner and it's like something from, it's an edit, a cut to a scene where suddenly the world is coming at you.
Yeah.
And I understand, I understand the excitement that can generate. But after a few minutes of that excitement, it's a huge price to pay.
It's electric. New York is electric.
No, it is. It is.
We're more manual here.
Yeah.
We kind of crank things up a little bit, Yeah. And you're absolutely right. If you love that energy, then New York is the place for you to be. If you love more of a chilled energy, then you should be here in Toronto or in Ontario, Canada. Now, listen, I'm fascinated like you about people's backgrounds, where they come from, where they stem from, the relationship that they had with their parents and their family, and how that played out in their career and their lives. Your dad, Louis, he was a salesman, wasn't he? A salesperson.
He was. He was a car salesman for the latter part of his life.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I remember that he sold clothes. I mean, it was a clothing salesman. Those were the two selling worlds of Lou Greenberg.
Was he on the road a lot?
No, he didn't. No, not. I have no. No, he wasn't. I mean, he worked. He worked insane hours. I think he did pretty well, but I think he did pretty well because he never stopped working. And I certainly remember when he was car salesman, because I was a grown up by then. He lived with a constant anxiety that if he wasn't in the showroom selling cars, that somebody was getting his commission, or somebody, a customer who might come back. And I know from, I didn't learn this from him, but I've certainly seen it myself, that people who work on commission, what a brutal way of earning a living that is, because somebody can come in one day and talk to you, and you get their name, they get yours, and you hope they will come back. I guess you hope that they will come back and see you, but they can just as easily come back, and whoever is in the showroom in that case and helps them is, that's really all they need. So I did learn that lesson, and not that I've had so much experience with this as a consumer, but if I'm somewhere that I know somebody is working on commission, I'm mindful of the fact that I have to say, so-and-so was helping me or serving me, particularly with something like cars, where the cost, it's nuts. But my dad was a commissioned salesman.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about the lessons that you learned from your father, or indirectly because of his life. And the thought that comes to mind is, when you were directing theater, you're not only involved with the thespians, with the actors and actresses, you're also involved with the stagehands, aren't you? The people working behind the scenes.
Somewhat. I mean, most of the work that I've done has been in what's referred to as independent theater. And in Toronto, that's probably 99% of what you find, apart from Mervish Productions, which is commercial and unionized and very, very laid out. And I've worked with them like when I was formerly with Studio 180 Theatre, we did 7 co-productions with Mervish Productions. So I'm very aware that in those settings, the director has little or no link to anything going on backstage. I mean, the union rules are very clear. They're laid out. That doesn't happen. But in every other theater in the city, it's very intense. You're working in a small setting, generally, relatively small. Theaters that seat anywhere, say, from 80 to 250 people. Sometimes a little bit larger, but mostly that's the range. They are not unionized in the same way. And they tend to be far more collaborative and far more integrated, so that when I'm directing something, I work certainly very closely with my stage manager, and the stage manager is the one who probably has the most immediate and constant connection with all elements of design and stage technicians and all of that. But you're all in the same space.
A small one too.
Yeah, and it's a really comfortable place to be, because you can talk to each other without, there is nobody's holding a rule book. In a very big facility like a 2,500 seat theater, it makes perfect sense there have to be very clear rules about how that kind of space works. You're dealing with machinery and technology. It takes a lot of people to make those spaces work well and efficiently. And it's fun to work in those spaces when the project is going well.
Yeah.
But in the more intimate spaces, where I've spent much more of my professional time, I just find it, it's far more fulfilling, because I'm not a designer, and there probably are some, particularly costume designers, who I feel that I'm being a little, what's the word? Disingenuous. I mean, I don't mind commenting to designers about what I think or what I think we might try, but I'm not a lighting person. I'm not a lighting designer. I'm not a lighting technician. I don't know anything about sound. So if a sound designer is working on a show, that's who I trust, and I'm banking on that person saying, feeding the ideas, and occasionally will say, what do you think? I mean, is that what you want? And I'm pretty good with yes or no. And occasionally I might ask for, say, is this possible? Is something like this possible? And it's not asked in a disingenuous way. It's simply, I don't know. So that, the sense of ensemble, the sense of collaboration, and you can, I think by extension, the sense of family that is engendered in production, it clearly feeds me, because that's what you walk back into every day.
Right. So that's what I was referring to when we were talking about your father. I thought how demanding it must be to be a car salesperson. And you have to be collaborative in an environment like that too, because if you don't work with others, on one hand, you'll lose opportunities. On the other hand, if you do work too closely with people, you may lose your commissions. They might jump in and grab it. So I was thinking about your sensitivity within theater to your colleagues, whether they be the stage manager or the lighting person or so on. You just have to develop a warmth with them, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the words you used earlier that obtains here is honesty. Not to pretend that you are being considerate, not to pretend anything. And that's another quality or another trait of theater that I find compelling, is that, there's an enforced honesty, because you get past the niceties relatively quickly. And by honesty, I don't mean being brash and being direct and in your face at all. It's just not worrying about what you have to say or questions you have to ask or suggestions you have to make. I mean, that's taken me a lot of my career, I think, to get to the point where I'm not worried about that if I say something, I might offend somebody.
Yeah.
Because I think that if I'm being honest and I'm saying something simply, it's not dogmatic, and it's not challenging. I mean, occasionally I have had to assert myself more forcefully than I would like, but it can happen, and pressures do things to all kinds of people.
It's true, very true. Wayne Gretzky said that when asked what he missed about the game, you know what he said? He said he missed the camaraderie.
Yeah.
In the dressing room.
Yeah.
Do you miss that camaraderie, that what you call the family?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've it's been a little more than a year since I stepped down as artistic director of the company, and I've maintained contact with a few people.
Yeah.
It may be true of all professions. I've said this too much, I think. It may be true of all professions. So I'll speak about the thing that I know, which is this. When you're not, even when I was still actively working, when in the theater world, in my experience, if your name isn't front and center, if you're not involved in a project that has public currency, in many ways it makes some people wonder whether you're still alive, or whether you've given up. And over a long career, there certainly have been periods, like dry periods for me, where I did think, this, I'm done. I mean, I won't be doing this again. And two periods in particular where I said, I've had quite enough of this. I mean, this is just debilitating. I am not helped by feeling that that nobody wants me to do anything. So I remember twice, and this was long enough ago, probably in the 80s, I'm guessing, where I said formally to friends that I am done now. I'm not doing this. I mean, I can't do this anymore. It's just too damn hard to be doing shows and then suddenly it just stops. And why does it stop? And when I approach people, why is there nothing coming back? So as I said, twice I did that, and after, in both cases, after a period of time, I said, well, I can't be without this, and I wish I could. Because I think I'd probably, in some ways, then I'd be much happier. But I'll see what I can do. So I was able to, restart or do something. So now, so formally saying, no, I really am not doing this anymore. It's occasionally. It's hard to accept that because I'm not in a position to hire people to do things, that there are many people who I haven't seen in a year plus, and people who I worked with a lot. So that's difficult, and especially the kind of work that I was doing with Studio 180. For 20 years I had the opportunity to do projects I would never have had the opportunity to do. And they were big, political, social. They were really, they were plays that required a lot of research, where we brought in people from many different backgrounds, academic and professional and historic, to help us and to work through the plays and to figure out. Actors working on these plays, I think their greatest doubt or fear was that they did not want to be seen. They didn't want people to think that they were the experts on whatever the topic was we were doing. And I think that's true of all actors. I think actors are absolutely determined to get to the truth of what they're playing so that they do not feel themselves to be fraudulent or have the audience look at them because they did a play, let's say about the Oslo Accords, because they happened to be in the play and somebody played an historical character. An actor doesn't want an audience to think that I really am that person or I know everything that anybody needs to know about this situation. So having had those experiences was remarkable, and doing it in the company of others and of many people, for that to suddenly not be there, that's taken some time to get used to.
You know, I'm looking at your body of work, and I must tell you that it is very, very healthy and packed with play after play after play. Our class, The Normal Heart, The House of Blue Leaves, I have 2.5 pages of theater, of plays that you have directed. It seems like you yourself was that you were always working.
Yeah, well, well, you know, I worked a lot. That's true. Yeah. I was particularly ferocious in, say, from about 1973, when I did my first Toronto production, until about 83. Yeah. I was working a lot. Now, that was most of what I was doing then was cabaret theater, dinner theater, which I don't even know that I don't even think that exists here anymore. But at the time, there was quite a bit of that in Toronto. There was a lot available. And then when Cats was done in Toronto, that was like the wall came down, because people, everybody, performers, musicians, technicians, could actually, those who were fortunate enough to be in that project, actually could earn a living. Mm-hmm. And they could earn a living in a large project that had huge public visibility. And the producer of that show was somebody I had worked with a lot, who produced most of the cabaret and dinner theater shows I had done. It may, as difficult as it was, I was not part of the Cats adventure. As difficult as it was for me to accept that she would probably not be doing any more of what I had been doing with her for about 10 years, it made perfect sense that you could actually create this mega project that would that had the potential to fund much more. So that ended that part of my career. I've apart from those periods, I guess, where I said I really didn't, I really felt that I'd had it. I was always pushing to do something. I was always hoping to get a chance to do something that I hadn't yet done. So being in Toronto, I arrived in Toronto in 1971, and it took me a while to figure out what Toronto was like, because I didn't know anybody. I knew I had just been married, and I knew Phyllis, but I didn't know anybody else. That was it. I knew one person in the city. So it took me a little while to get a sense of what Toronto was and how it was different from Montreal, which was in probably every way imaginable, but it was a completely different place. And then, so I think what I was saying was that I was really determined and pushing and trying to get things done and learn how to do that. And eventually, I guess it really was in the mid-'80s that I started getting work outside of Toronto. And at that point in Canada, people, actors, directors, designers were really working back and forth across the country quite comfortably and quite frequently. It's no longer. I believe it's no longer like that. I mean, the country is much more regionally defined than I believe it was then. Um, and also, I realize now, having had the experience of being somewhere else, like Edmonton or Montreal or Vancouver, for instance, being regarded as an interloper. Say, we've got people here. Why do we have to bring people from Toronto?
Yes.
And I wasn't surprised by the statement, but at that point in my career, I thought, oh, I understand what you're saying, but I would never get this kind of work in Toronto. So, as much as you might not like the fact that I'm here, I'm not leaving.
Joel, I said in our discussion that you're an icon in the industry, and you question that. And thinking about it as you speak,
yeah,
I think being an icon in Canada is dramatically different than being an icon in America. We're quiet about who we are. We're humble about who we are. Yet our accomplishments can be enormous.
yeah,
And once again, when I review your body of work, there's a saying in Hebrew, kol hakavod, which is well done, all the power to you, because you have accomplished so much within this city, within this country, and have brought theater to the minds and the lives of so many. Now, I have been playing around with artificial intelligence a little bit. And as some of my guests know, and my co-hosts on another series that I do, I asked AI to write or develop a poem around my guests. And I've done that for you. So do you want to hear what AI has to say about you, Joel Greenberg?
Sure.
In the spotlight's glow where stories ignite stands Joel Greenberg, a master of light. With a vision expansive, a passion so deep, he guides every moment where dreams dare to leap. From page to performance, his magic unfolds, crafting each character with warmth and with bold. A whisper of genius, a spark in the air, transforming the ordinary into something rare. With a director's eye, he sees what could be, drawing out emotions, setting spirits free. The stage comes alive under his careful hand, every choice deliberate, a symphony grand. In the laughter and tears, he finds the divine, weaving together the threads of each line. Joel breathes in the silence and watches it bloom, creating a world that dispels every gloom. With each certain rise, he beckons us near, inviting us in, igniting our cheer. In the realm of the theater, his spirit will soar, for Joel Greenberg's vision opens every door. What do you think?
Okay.
That's all just okay?
Well, no, thanks for that. I mean, yeah, no, it's you don't. I think it's the first poem
Right.
that I'm aware of that anybody has crafted about me or used my career as a source of inspiration. I find just the word icon or iconic. I understand the word and I understand what you mean. I just find that I find the word is so overused, and I'm not directing this at you, but it's second only to National Treasure as a kind of
fair enough
wraparound label. If it's true, if it's true, then I couldn't be happier.
Yes.
Honestly. But as much as anybody likes being reinforced and having, hearing that what you're doing has value, I'm not my own press officer, as perhaps this podcast will prove.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you. I'm telling you, my friend, you're doing a great job, and I am excited for you, and I'm so looking forward to the next iteration of your career, because I think you're going to do amazingly well. And if you need any help, please feel free to call.
Okay. Thank you, Avrum.
I want to thank my guest today, Joel Greenberg. You know what? Take a look for his podcast, because I think you're really, really going to enjoy it. You'll see at the bottom of his screen ways to find it. And we look forward to the development of it. I'm sure he's going to do wonderfully well. You have been listening to the Avrum Rosensweig Show. It is sponsored by the Professional Center. I wish all my Jewish friends a beautiful holiday and a happy and sweet New Year's, and just a beautiful year of great accomplishments. Let's make this world rock. Let's make it even better. It's the shinier gem that it has the ability to be. And make sure to pursue your own passion. Take that out of the interview that I did with Joel today. Find that zone within you, which some people construe as a gift. Thank you so very much. We will see you soon. And as we say in Yiddish, sei gesund, go in health, and take care. Thank you, Joel.